Hello everybody, and welcome to the Hurdy Gurdy Cafe, an hour of interviews, music, and camaraderie. I'm Ryan, and I'll be your host along this crazy adventure through the land of the wheel fiddle. So strap in, and let's see what's cranking in the Hurdy Gurdy community today. Welcome back everyone to the Hurdy Gurdy Cafe podcast. I'm here with Sergio Gonzalez.
As always, hello guys.
Yes, and a very, very special guest, Pablo Urssusson.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Yes, and did I pronounce your name right that time?
Myself.
Yes.
Pablo C. Ursusson.
Got it. Excellent. Sergio,
probably other people around pronounce it better than myself.
It's all right. It's all right. The Sergio kind of turned me on to your music, and you also turned me on to even more music. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today. And Sergio, since you were the prime impetus behind getting Pablo on the show today, I'd like to let you take over just for now, and let's get going.
Okay.
So how would you like to start?
So Pablo is he plays on the band Sangre de Muerdago, which is how would you describe the style, Pablo? Like dark folk, very deep with the guitar. He also sings. It has quite a lot of influence of Galician music on it. Some Swedish touches. How would you describe it, Pablo?
Hard to tell. I have to say that people often have difficulties to describe because it's not very generic. I will say. I like to say just plainly like it's just folk music. Even if the vast majority it's songwriter music, is not trad, but we definitely do play some trad stuff, and we usually try to be coherent with the folk tradition. It doesn't rule, at every time, but it's something that we like to have present, and we like to work with the traditional dances and so on. But after all, it's a songwriters folk. I wouldn't say dark. I know that a lot of people say dark.
I say dark, but okay.
Yeah, no, well, it's just my personal view.
Nice.
I will call it light instead of dark.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Maybe I haven't listened to enough of it yet. I mean, I've listened to a good bit, but to me, I don't get a heavy feeling with it. To me, it sounds very like I'm walking through nature.
Yes, oniric. Yes, oniric, nature. I get that vibe too. So
Yeah.
yes, I may understand what you say about it being more light than dark. It makes sense, definitely.
Yeah, because I don't know, people relate it to dark, which sometimes I understand, but I think maybe sometimes it is a very romantic. I think it's very melancholic.
Yes.
But I think it is not necessarily dark or even sad to me. I try to put more of or infuse it with a more of encouraging feeling, that gets you in motion somehow.
Yes, very nice.
You seem surprised, Sergio.
Well, before we get too far into the interview, why don't we take a listen to that track that you sent over called Heavy Mental? Does that sound all right?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Good English.
Yes, so here we go. and that was the track Heavy Mental. So what can you tell us about that track?
Heavy Mental is a track. It's one of the first ones I wrote for this album, and I remember, like, my memories from where I wrote it. It's especially that middle part that basically baptized the song with the name Heavy Mental, because it has like kind of a heavy metal feeling with all that middle part. And I remember that I was like struggling with the right hand and the left hand and so on. But this is somehow the earliest memory I have from the song. Then we actually played it for a whole tour, a bit different of how it ended up the song. So in the next tour, we were already playing some kind of a second version of it, and the title of Heavy Mental comes also because of that middle part being kind of like reminding or resembling some kind of heavy metal, but at the same time it was like some kind of heavy times anemically for me and for another person in the band, and somehow that thing of heavy mental was a word game, but I cannot tell much more than just that.
Well, when I was listening to it, I really would like to learn how to play it. So I guess my question to you is, do I need to learn it by ear? Is there any chance you have some sheet music for it that I could use?
You gotta learn it by ear.
Okay, I'll do it.
We can learn it together, Ryan. I also like it. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Music reading and writing is one of my how would you say, one of these subjects that are still hanging there, and I have to say that I just recently started to get myself into the reading, because it hasn't been an impediment my whole life to write music, to compose, to go anywhere I want to go. But at this very moment, I also feel a need to write my own compositions, and also like after years learning always strat stuff by ear, or any kind of stuff by ear, sometimes I recognize how much easier it could be if I just have like at least a notion of how to go through scores and read them. I mean, I don't need to read them like a book, but at least that I understand what it says, and because I guess it happened to everybody that we learn a tune by ear, and then we realize after 1.5 years that we are playing a couple of wrong notes here and there. Then you listen from someone else and you are like, oh, no way, really?
Yes.
I never realized, but this is part of it, I guess.
But see,
so hopefully I can provide you with a score.
Yes. See how Pablo can compose like that. He's a brilliant composer, and he doesn't know a lot about reading. So I would love to compose like him. Really, I really love how he does it.
I agree.
It's all instinct, that's for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is why, this is lovely, because it's super fresh. I like it. Okay, so Pablo, how all did start? I mean, how did you get into the folk music? How did you start playing the Hurdy Gurdy? Because you come from the metal background, right? No, you don't. Okay, you don't come from the metal background. So please explain how it went.
Yeah, my background I will call punk.
Oh yes.
Yes, I mean, in the at least this is my point of it. I know that a lot of people have different ideas of what punk is, and this is why that's the beauty of punk for me. Different, like, people have very different approaches and very different ideas of what is punk. From a street punk, more like a chaos attitude punk with the proper aesthetics, to the intellectual punk, publishing books, and stuff like that. So there's a wide spectrum of what punk can mean for people. But when it comes to Gurdy, I'm from Galicia, and there in my children years, in my early years, my family, especially the side of my father, still met very often, and they sang, especially like all these tavern songs, singing, drinking songs, usually very mournful songs. In Galicia, we call them alalas, and cantos de taberna, which basically is tavern songs. And this is something that I don't know how many times I have around in my life, and I played around with my cousins, and where we try to learn the songs. So I always had that Galician tradition very deep in me, and some of these melodies, especially the more like minor, melancholic, romantic melodies, always resonated very vibrantly inside of me. And I remember myself being a kid and already getting all these goosebumps with these melodies, with the bagpipe of my cousin, the guitar of my aunt. And from there, one day, I don't know, I just always kept it. Then as a teenager, I discovered punk. Everything I wanted to do was screaming out, and I couldn't play a single instrument. I always, in my house, no one really plays, anybody in my direct family household. I had a flute that I bought myself, and I was learning some Galician melodies with it, but there was nothing really further but through punk. And I started screaming in bands, and I basically just step into punk like through the local squad in my city. And then I discovered all this world, and they had this info shop, and there were all these books with amazing information and things. And in Galicia, we have, for me, the luck that the punk world is very related to the folk tradition, and it's like, yeah, very much.
It's related. This is interesting.
It's quite unique, and I think it happens a lot in the Celtic world, like Ireland, Scotland, England in general, French Brittany, Galicia. We have like this anti-imperialist music, in which like the tribes sing these songs of freedom, which in other parts of the world, they somehow took the other position. If you come here to Central Europe, there are many places in which like folk music means something more rancid and more conservative and something like that.
I think we talked with Sam about this on the other podcast. Yes.
Sam lives in Berlin, so it's possible. It's possible, but well, coming back to the story, in Galicia, there's all this connection, and punks play bagpipes, and there's a whole, you go to a squad and it's decorated with the Celtic things and spiritual things from the oral tradition and so on. Anyway, through punk, I played in many bands, and folk music was my private thing, something that I made at home. I had my acoustic guitar and a classical guitar, and my public music was punk. I also started playing guitar because my bandmates were playing and I was just screaming, and I thought they were having so much fun playing the instruments. So at the end, I borrowed a guitar, and it all started. It just was as simple as that. And through the years, the folk music started coming out suddenly. And the first years of Sangre are very timid and very private too. I lived in the country. I live in a caravan. That's when I bought the Hurdy Gurdy. I play my instruments in my porch. I have not even electricity. It was just very simple life. And once I moved to Germany, when I was in Galicia, I released a demo and the first album, which I can't dare to even listen to 1 second of those records. It's what happened, It's what happened, and I got to stand for it. But after I moved to Germany, it's when somehow my private folk music came out to the public somehow, and heavy sounds. Because Sergio is not so wrong saying that maybe have a background metal, because even though my background is like, well, I would say punk or DIY punk, that was more always like a more of an ideological background. But when it came to music, I always played on that heavy side of music, even if we play in more like DIY punk circuits. Our music was more on the mournful, emotional, very melancholic, heavy music, to call it somehow. Yeah.
But it's so, I mean, what I've heard so far, I would not have thought that you were a punk. I would not have thought that you played punk. I mean,
I still am.
I believe it. I believe it. But the music just sounds so.
Yeah, it's just a joke, yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds so rich and full, and the term I think Sergio used, like organic. And I'm curious, since when I'm listening to some of the tracks, I don't know who's singing what, but for example, I heard or saw one of your videos where you were singing along to a music box. It said like 30 note box, and you have a beautiful voice. So what you're saying in the punk band, you were doing the screaming, not necessarily much singing.
No, I was screaming my guts out. Really, it was like really extreme music. That's everything I can say. It's like it was extreme emotional music, because I think if something characterizes all the heavy music I made in my life was a very high amount of emotional charge or burden, or it's loaded. It is loaded with melancholy and emotion, and that was always the main part. I think Sangre is very emotional too, and so somehow I don't feel like stop and go when I go from heavy music to folk music, because I eventually keep on writing. At the moment, I write a lot of rock stuff, psychedelic stuff, 70s rock. I like music in general. I like stuff in general. Some of my favorite bands are all from the 60s and 70s. I like everything, to be honest. But that emotional part, it's always a very primordial part. And when I write music, I always seek to express that. I always struggle to give shape to something that I cannot say with words, just like that. That's something that you need to put through the strings or through poetry or whatever expression way, right? Yeah.
It's so nice. I would listen to him talking all day.
I agree.
Sorry for the.
Oh well.
Yes, the beeps are necessary, Ryan. Okay. Let's talk about Gurdys a little bit. We talked about your project, your background, your music, but now I am curious. Which was your first Gurdy? Who made it? How did you get it?
My first Gurdy was made by Jaime Rivas.
Oh, Jaime! Nice.
Yeah, Jaime is the teacher, or was. If I didn't get this wrong,
Air
parentheses.
Parentheses.
Air parentheses. Okay, yeah. Air parentheses.
Air parentheses. Yeah. I've heard the school of building Gurdys in Galicia is over. I hope I'm wrong.
Oh, I hope you're wrong too.
I hope I'm wrong and I got a wrong information. I don't know if it was April Fool's information or something like that, but I read that somewhere. So fingers crossed, I hope not. But Jaime is the teacher of the Gurdy Building School, which is the place where builders like Cesar Loureiro, Jaime Rebollo are coming from. So Jaime Rivas was the teacher of all these guys. And my first Hurdy Gurdy was a very simple, very, very, very archaic studio Galician Sinfonia. It's basically as simple as it gets. But it was everything I can afford. I was living in the caravan in the country. I didn't have much money. I bought my first Gurdy for €950, and that's everything I could have. It had no dogs,
which is
no bassing
traditional.
bridge. That's it. It had not even a trumpet. It has a G drum and a C drum, and then you have the three chanters, and that's it. You don't even have a mush, you know. And that was my first Gurdy, but as soon as I think it was only 5 months later, I tried Rebollo. In Galicia, we have this really, really, really beautiful festival called Pardiñas. It's like some kind of our own mini Saint Chartrier or mini Leçon Continue, in which you have all the luthiers and there's a lot of bagpipes, percussion, bouzoukis, and Hurdy Gurdys. And there I tried one of Rebollo's Gurdys, and that was like a revelation. You know, it was just like, holy hell, this is really something else. This is something else, because that's the feeling I had. This is something else. And once I was so, because my first thought was like, well, with this simple Gurdy, I'm going to carry on forever. But it was just a few months later that I tried one from Rebollo, and I told myself again, okay, never say never. And that from that moment on, then I ended up having one of Cesar's instruments. But yeah, my first one was from Jaime Rivas, and it was very simple, but it helped me to get a notion. I have to say I didn't learn too much with that, but it got me. It just basically launched me into it, right? Gave me the first push. But when I got my Loureiro, I felt like, okay, reset somehow. Was a bit of a mind reset. Yeah.
And you have one. Oh, sorry. Go, Ryan.
I was wondering, how long have you been playing?
It was not continuous, because I have my first Gurdy for I will say 1.5 years. But then it happened, like I ordered a Gurdy from Loureiro, from Cesar, before he had this new model, the actual one that he's selling around. So I ordered one of his old models. But and that's what happened, that as soon as I ordered, then Cesar got some things on his way, like he had to repair the whole lot of Gurdys from the Narón school, which is a music school in northern Galicia. And then he got into designing the new one, which took a while, of course. And that's why I ended up with one of the prototypes of this new Loureiro model, because I was already waiting for one of the old ones, and Cesar is amazing. And he gave me a really good price because I was waiting for so long. But it meant that I wait for like 2.5 years between Gurdys, because I sold my first Gurdy in order to buy Cesar's, but then all the designing and the restoration of the other Gurdys got in the middle, and way too long time passed. Yeah.
So how long have you been playing?
Right. 1.5 years with my first Gurdy, and I have Cesar one for 6 years almost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So something like 7 to 8 years of playing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like we're just showering you with compliments, but you play beautifully. It's just really, really wonderful.
It's what he deserves.
Yes.
He plays beautifully, he sings beautifully, he composes amazingly. So what can you say? I mean,
when Sergio, told me about you, I didn't really know much, and so then I started looking you up. He sent me your YouTube page for the band, and I just got lost in it. I thought, man, why have I never heard of him before?
it's your kind of music, Ryan. I think
it is. It is definitely my kind of music. Yes.
Wow, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, for what I've seen, I like your kind of music because I always see you sitting there with Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath t-shirts. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
And
this is
the
very-
mighty Andrei Vinogradov T-shirt from.
Yes. I recently had I was going to wear it today, but it needs washed. I have an Andrei Vinogradov T-shirt that I had made.
it needs wash. That
Yeah.
thing we use as well.
Yeah.
I love that Vinogradov first album, which is like half trad songs, half street musician songs, if I'm not
Yes.
wrong.
Mhm.
Yes.
When I discovered that, I was on my knees. I really like it, especially like the spirit that goes through the instrument and comes out to your ears. It's really cool. I really like it. Like it. Very deep.
And then this gets us to the next question, which is, who are your 5 top players? Like the players you enjoy the most, or the players that influenced your music?
It used to be 3, but I think you
I
bumped it
know.
up to 5.
It used to be 3, but it's so difficult. I mean, if you can make the top 3, then go for it. But let's do
Okay,
top 5.
thanks for saying 5 because I think I cannot.
See?
I cannot put my favorite players in a top 10 because I basically like everybody and I look up to everybody and I always like on guitar too, on any instrument. I sometimes it's amazing. Music is amazing, right, guys? Because sometimes you can see somebody with a gurdy or with a guitar that has no clue, but does a move that maybe it can be clumsy, badly made, or whatever, but it can trigger an idea or it can click something, and I like that a lot. But when it comes to my favorites, I have to say Herman Diaz. He's a big influence, and I like he's unique to me. He's something else. And then I like Efren. Efren is a really good influence, and I really like his approach too, and his musicality, and I have the feeling like he's an extremely technical musician, like Herman is. Both of them are extremely technical, but both of them will sacrifice technicality for musicality at any moment, or at least this is my feeling, and this is an approach that I like. And I have to say that this is something that often I find in Hurdy Gurdy music. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have the feeling that a lot of times, like, people pay more attention to technicality than musicality, and I really like to see all these like masters of the Gurdy that have an amazing technicality sometimes come out with simple songs, at least compared to what they are able to do on a technical side of it. So this is something I appreciate in these guys very much. I like Patrick Buffard very much. He's a very exciting player to me. Radically different than Herman, for example, but unbelievable. And damn, I just realized I'm saying only guys.
Oh, this podcast is inclusive.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, my next one, I have to say Oscar Fernandez from Galicia. He's a big influence for me, and he's also somebody that keeps himself always super humble, he enjoys his, to me, he feels like a very authentic musician, incredible technicality and musicality in his compositions and in his interpretations. And for me, he's someone from whom lots of people should turn an eye to, because his technique is beauty and is very genuine, I will say.
What's his name again?
Oscar Fernandez.
Oscar. Okay.
Yeah, he's an amazing accordionist. He plays in the Sempes, which for like many old school folk people, it's very important. It is a very important Galician folk band, unique too. Very nice.
You maybe we can write this in the description because it's definitely worth it. You guys, if you want to hear very very nice folk music, go find Ostempes on YouTube, really, or buy the albums.
Super nice, super humble, super beautiful, and I don't know to whom I can give the next spot, which is already the last one. But there are many players that I love. I love Ramon Rodriguez. He has an amazing French style. He's one of the Spanish players with a really beautiful French, very traditional style. His band Pan de Capazo was always a total reference for me, and then on top of this, there are a lot of people I love. I love Johannes, obviously. I appreciate a lot of different aspects on people, like all this new generation of Swedes and Danish folk school people are coming super strong. In Galicia, there's so many unknown players, that keep themselves very, at a very local level. There's amazing stuff. France. So I like. Wait, Nigel Eaton. Nigel is one of my. I don't know how can I forget, but Nigel is one of my very, 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 very favorites, and for me, he's also unique in his absolute own right. He's unbelievable, and he's another guy that his musicality will always reign. His technical ability is insane to me, and I guess to everybody, to anybody.
Yes.
But I like the musicality, and I especially appreciate a lot always to favor the musicality over the technicality. Yeah.
You've mentioned that a few times, and I can imagine what you're saying. But when you're saying that they can give more attention to musicality versus technicality, are you saying that even though they can show off, they don't? Or what do you mean? Can you flesh that out a little bit? What do you mean by that?
They show off in their own way, I guess, and all of them that I know personally, they are the most humble, down-to-earth people I know, and that makes them even more amazing players to me. But their technicality is there, but I think sometimes you reach a level in which you can somehow not disguise your technicality, but you can make stuff that is not that simple sound simple. Or you can, I think sometimes, I always think it's better to be simple and solid than try to be technical and be sloppy, because totally. The best example is on a drummer, I prefer a drummer that spends 5 minutes doing AC/DC. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, I'd rather go for that than 1,000 fill-ins and rolls that are sloppy. And I think, this is my approach. I think these guys don't lack also technicality in their output, in their live or records, but I think they will never sacrifice musicality or expression in a song in order to incorporate a technicality for the sake of it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe.
Right.
I don't think you're wrong. And this is especially very clear when you hear Germán playing, because he definitely can play like what Coupe de 16, like he finished the game.
Now he's just playing for fun.
Exactly, and now it's clear that he seeks the expression, the detail. He finished the game. he doesn't need to show off, as you said.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful part of music is that you never finish the game, And Germán has a lot to tell, and he will always have. I will be always thirsty and ready to hear what he has to tell. Same and here. I always say, like, if guys like Chopin or Beethoven died or Bach died without reaching any end, we can be very relaxed about that. That music,
sure, it's true.
Music is never going to end. But since you mentioned all these coupes, for example, I'm a self-taught player, and I attended 2 workshops in my life. One was with Anxo Pintos, which was a very beautiful. It was an amazing workshop. How much percent of the workshop was about the cups and the right hand? 0.
Because he doesn't play right hand, right, Pablo?
He does play it, but he said that he doesn't shine and that he has a lot to learn himself, and he says it very easily. And I'm sure it's another favorite of mine.
Sure,
Again,
very nice.
top 8. It's a beautiful person, musician, everything. The workshop with him was heavenly, and we learned so much. I learned so much without realizing how much I was learning, that it took me weeks to realize how much I learned with him. And it was 0 right hand. Germán, the second workshop I did was with Germán. And also, some of us students was like, oh, show us Coupe de 12,
Oh.
Yeah. And what did Germán say? Why? When are you going to use Coupe de 12? This is not musical. Yeah. His answer was like, this is not musical. It's for fun. And this is what Germán says. Coupe de 12 is for fun, and to show off and to, I don't know, it's just something, it's almost too much. It's like playing a solo in which you play like 24 notes per second, like he will do like Satriani, or it's just for the fun of it and for pushing human ability, something like that. And of course, he can do Coupe de 16, and probably some people out there are getting further. But yeah, it's also, I think he also mentioned it about to get people with feet on the ground. It's just like, okay, it's cool, you learn, you push your limits, this is really positive for people. We push our limits, we bring our playing forward and forward and forward, and we learn, and it's amazing to get to do a coupe of so many. But then when you think about composing and music on a song, that's my guess, why Germán was just like, why do you want to learn Coupe de 12? This you will use for nothing,
Definitely.
Yeah, and this was beautiful. That was a beautiful answer. It really got me like on my back on the chair, like, listen to this, man. It's a life lesson, It's not only about music. Yeah.
Right. Well, but before we go too far, because I'm sure we've got a lot more to cover, you've got a new album coming out, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't we listen to track 5, Lonshania? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfect. Lonxania. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we take a listen to that, and we'll come back and talk about your new album.
Let's do it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. Lonshania. right, so we're back with Pablo and Sergio, and we just got done listening to Lonshania track 5 from Pablo's new album. What would you like to tell us about this track, this tune, or the album itself? Anything?
Sure. Well, the album is the 5th studio album by Sangre, which is, I will say, my main project since years. It's probably the over 10th released, if I'm not wrong, but 5th full-length album. Well, it's about to come out, or well, by the time we are on air, like it's out.
It's out.
It's out.
I'm gonna say no. That's a joke. Cut that, please. The album is just out, and it features 11 new tracks. Only one is a fully traditional song, and Lonxania is one of the 4 songs that feature Hurdy Gurdy in the whole album. And it has an intro which is more like a Galician style romance. It has no right hand technique besides just turning, cranking. And the second part is a polska, which is a more like a Northern Europe, Swedish, Scandinavian dance. And it's also I wrote it quite a while ago. Actually, this song it took a really long time to put together. Just like work on it, then forgot about it. Then I came back for it. Then one day I wrote that intro. Then I placed it in front. It was a whole developing of things. Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful. I mean, so far from what I've heard, it's lovely. So
thank you so much. I'm very glad, very happy with the new album. We have Germán also collaborating. We have some people from the Hurdy Gurdy world, because Germán Diaz plays in one of the songs, and Efren Lopez mastered the album, which did a beautiful work. I love it very much. So thank you, Efren. Thank you, Germán, very much for being there. And we work it a lot. So I'm actually happy and nervous to see what's with it. I was about to say also that the record is still not out. But
How long had you been working on recording it? How long did that take, the process to record the album?
It was in 2 chunks, I will say. Usually we have limited time at studio for different reasons, and now, even though we record it in our own studio that we have here in Leipzig, our harpist lives in the United States. She's from Oregon. She lives in Salem. So we had 4 days and 4 days only to record so we recorded it in this way. We recorded a live quartet, and this is like the skeleton of the album, all together in the room, with a viola, with a Celtic harp, guitar or Hurdy Gurdy, depends what I play in the song, and a nickel harpa. And then on top we recorded, then we went on tour. We were supposed to be on tour for almost 4 weeks. I was supposed to meet Sergio, but actually in Barcelona was the coming back. We played only 4 concerts, and that was the big weekend of Corona outbreak when every country was going nuts. The news were burning hot every hour, and so on. We drove back home. But yeah.
That was terrible, Pablo. That was terrible, really.
Yeah,
because
so
many shows got cancelled. And
it happened to everybody, you know. For me, it was painful because it was. I organized the whole tour. We didn't have an agent at the moment, and we were like, let's say, in between agents. So it was a kind of I needed to prove myself that I could DIY the tour. And I put so much effort. I worked since August until March, like very hardly on having a very proper, professionally organized tour, really well done, and so yeah. But you can't do nothing against
Shit
that, you know.
happens,
So at the end, we just came back home, and I was like, I'd rather don't feel frustrated for something I have no power over, you know, and that I cannot change no matter what. So after the lockdown, even if here in Germany was more of a symbolic lockdown, not forced, but then after that, it was in early May that we came to finish the album and recorded all the voices, the percussions, the flutes. We overdubbed the flutes, the music boxes. We incorporate a couple of field recordings and these little things. Recorded the interludes, a couple. Yeah. So we work for a few days afterwards. But what is the quartet recording? It's always kind of tight because we have 4 days and 4 days only. And Asia is our harpist. Even she lives in America, even though she's called Asia. And she has this limited time, so we have to cope with that. I wish that for this, I'm really happy with the result, but I wish that for this album we had a bit extra time, because the second part of the recording, it was the first time ever that we really had all the time we wanted to do things, you know, and even go to the studio to record some overdubs and it's like, today's not my day. Okay, just go home. It's okay. You know, it's no problem. We do it tomorrow. And this is a luxury. Well, this used to be a luxury because now we live in times of home studios, right? And it is relatively easy compared to 20 years ago to do a professional result home studio album. In the 90s, when I started recording, there you go.
Yes, my microphones.
Right? But everybody knows that in the 90s, you go to a studio and it's like, okay, guys, we have 3 days, or we have 1 day, or I recorded albums in 1 day, just like, mix in a couple of hours. We go back home with the master.
Tape.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, we were kids, you know, but it's just like, it's all together, as noisy as possible. Yeah.
What happened with the Addams family? Tell everybody.
The song.
Because you used to, okay, let me explain this. You used to explain this history on the shows when you play, but maybe our audience didn't have the chance to go to see you live, so maybe you can explain it here.
Sure. Well, you're asking me about a song that we only played live,
exactly,
and that we never recorded yet, because I don't know, but I don't know how many tunes I've written, but most of them are not public or published or even recorded. But I have tons of music that I have to slowly get to record. And the Addams, what's a song? It's a polska dance that we baptized the polska after Adam song, which I guess like the people into traditional music maybe recognize that polskas, like in Sweden, the polskas, which basically means like polonaise. Songs, they are named often after the name of the person that composed it. So it's like polska after Johansson, polska after Biscale, polskas, many of them. So this one, since it started with the family Addams phrase, it started with those 4 notes, and somehow the thing, it's like the story it starts before I wrote the song, because like for whatever reason I was cursed with the song of the Addams family stuck in my mind for every single day, especially when I walked home or when I was walking somewhere, and the walking rhythm is very Addams family like. So I found myself often like walking in the streets until I was so done with the song that I decided to write a song that started with pa 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 pan. So every time that I will get the earworm of the Addams family, I could just detour right away to the other tune. So instead of being stuck with the pa 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 pam, da 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 da, and then I could go pa 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 pam param taram taram taram, and merge into the post and forget. And it really worked. It was some kind of good self-medicine, and then that's why it came with the name of the postcard after Adam's song, because of the first 4 notes. And one day we will record it. That's for sure.
Please record it. It's so nice.
Yeah,
it's so nice.
I want to record a lot of tunes. That's probably one of the next plans we have. Is another tunes album. Yeah. Something like that. I won't reveal much more though.
Is there any live recordings of this tune, like on YouTube or anywhere?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll have to dig that up. So one question I have for you, since a lot of people listen to this podcast, the Hurdy Gurdy Cafe, and they're all levels of players, people who are just getting into the Hurdy Gurdy, how you were self-taught, and teachers are very useful, because I'm also a combination of self-taught, but then I realized I definitely need to have someone tell me a few things. How would you encourage people who are getting into the Hurdy Gurdy? How would you encourage them to learn or to approach it? Any insights from your own experience?
Yeah. Be fearless.
Oh,
okay. What do you mean?
I mean that I think a very important part of being a Gurdy player and to learn the instrument is to have no fear to put your fingers in and to move and to tense and distend and detense and just like don't treat your Gurdy like this fragile porcelain object.
Exactly. Yes.
Treat your Gurdy like a guitar. Don't be scared to grab it, to open, to attach, detach, remove, twist, and everything. I think this is because you don't learn how to play Gurdy without learning how to maintain it. And this is something that anybody, this is the first thing you have to learn. It's like if you want to invest the time to learn how to play Gurdy, you have to invest the time to maintain it. That's it. Teaching, I have nothing to say about that because I'm self-taught. My self-experience, I'm a very dedicated person. So when I want to go for something, I go for it. And it took me blood and sweat to come to where I am. Not that I place myself in any position at all, but of course, when you study, when you practice, you harvest at one point, you will harvest. So play and have no fear and develop your ear. I think teachers are very helpful. I myself learn a lot in the two workshops that I attended. I learned so much with both Anxo and Germán. And I also learned a lot just talking to people. And I have to admit that there were a couple of concepts sometimes that really were revealing. They were revealing to me stuff that I never thought before. And suddenly it feels so basic. Like I played for 4 or 5 years Gurdy, and then one day I think it was in one of the Gurdy groups. I read a comment, I believe by Nigel Eaton, that was telling a new player, think of the Gurdy as a rhythmic instrument, and that the right hand leads. And this is something that I've never picture consciously, just to have that conscious about it, because for me, I think unconsciously I played more like the right hand follows the melody and try to fit. But once I read that, I was like, this is how it goes, because the one has to be always the one, and it has to be always on point. And if this hand goes on point, the other one has to follow the point. And this was somehow a notion that this is one of the times, at least this one time that I thought like, why nobody told me ever that, you know?
Yes.
And sometimes we live with some of these concepts, or we are not fully conscious about some ideas that maybe can improve our playing from like many layers behind, not something like, okay, it's going to be so obvious that I learned this new technique, but it's something that strengthens our foundations as players, you know, like this kind of concepts that, you know, that the rhythm has to be on point, like a drummer, you know, you have to be on point.
Right.
And so, but coming back to the, sorry, I have the feeling I talk too much, right?
No, it's wonderful.
Right. Well, the player should be fearless, and I think people should develop their criticisms, you know, and they also should be fearless about asking, because this is also something that it happens, I think, sometimes because of not trying to appear ignorant. People don't ask, and you know, because of the fear of, oh yeah, I'm gonna appear so like that I don't know, or whatever. And I think it's really good. And I'm, for example, myself, I always try to ask every question, for as basic as it may seem, but it's just like, hey, just to make sure. And I think people should question their things and have a critical eye.
Mm-hmm.
This is my advice. Yeah.
Well, to follow up, when you're talking, so when you talk about the right hand leads, you mentioning that, it reminded me. I remember when I started working on the trompette, and Sergio was giving me some advice on that. I found this kind of brought it all together for me, that when I started trying to focus more on the right hand, even if I was just hitting just one, and I just kept doing that, I actually realized all of a sudden that many of the melodies I was trying to learn, it became easier for me to learn them somehow. And
you were being like your own metronome somehow.
Yeah, and that made all the difference. But I've got a question for both of you, because both of you play guitar, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pablo better than me, a lot better than me.
well,
you can play some chords.
This comes up a lot. Maybe it's just about using the right hand more. But you know, coming from Irish music, where I would play mainly octave mandolin or bouzouki to back up sessions, I would always tap my foot just to keep the rhythm. Mm-hmm. I have a hell of a time doing that with the hurdy-gurdy, because when I'm cranking and then I start trying to tap my foot, then the hurdy-gurdy is going up and down.
It's another dissociation. Because you are tapping the right foot or the left one.
Well, I mean, I'm tapping the right foot, and maybe that's the problem. But still, even when I tap the left foot, you know, it's going to lift this bottom part. So, am I just what am I doing wrong? Should I not tap my foot? Do you tap your foot?
I tap my foot a lot.
Okay, you do.
I don't care about
lots of the Galician stuff. I only tap the foot.
Okay.
I don't do right hand rhythm for the traditional dances from Galicia. I wouldn't do right hand most of the time. Sometimes I do, but often I do only foot. Yeah.
Okay, and it works out. It must just be me for some reason, because I get going and I start tapping my foot, and then I get off.
It's like another dissociation, right? But I don't know. Okay. I really want to hear Nigel Eaton talking about the footwork, really, because he's amazing when he's playing. He's pa pa pa.
That's true. That's true.
Lovely. I really want to hear him talking about this. Nigel, come to the podcast. Final warning.
Well, let's write that question down, because that's a good point. Now that I think about it, when I've seen him playing, he's definitely tapping quite vigorously.
Yes. And
yeah. He does.
It adds something to the character of the pieces he's playing. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to say something about the fearless concept that Pablo advised to the beginners. Now with my beginner students, I am also starting to think about that, and I am encouraging them to improvise a lot from the first day, really, because when they start playing, they go like a bit shy and I don't know if I'm playing good or not. But once you learn your first scale, your first mode, you know the notes, you have some steps, you can improvise, you can get your own melodies. And I think this is very important for developing your own character, your own musicality. Don't let this for the future. I don't think you need to learn. I don't think you need to know how to play at all to improvise and to create and to experiment. And
Yeah,
this is
you're right.
going to give you a lot of power from the minute one.
I learned like that.
Sure,
I,
yes,
I
Pablo is
just learned like
your
that.
example.
I
Yes.
just learned writing songs, This is
And I did the
basically,
opposite. I did the opposite, and and it's terrible. It's a terrible concept because now for me it's very difficult. Not very difficult because now I'm starting to compose more and stuff. But I made it the other way, and I think if I had explored the musicality, the improvisation, the creativity from early stages,
Mhm.
now I would play super different and probably
Yeah.
better.
I mean, absolutely, definitely, you will play different because my story is exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. I borrow a guitar that a friend of mine had in the attic of her family. It didn't even have strings or anything, and I put some strings and I just started making sounds out of the guitar without having a
Yes,
clue. Really, without
yes,
having a
totally.
clue, I just started to make things, and many years passed, and many songs I wrote, and many records I put out, and it is now. After 20 plus years of playing music, guitar, different instruments, drums, and Gurdy for many years, and among other stuff, it is now that I'm starting to learn how to read music and started, but I made it all the way till here without that, and it's a really interesting concept to develop first the other part, because usually it's the other way, and I know a lot of people that study in the conservatorium and that, and it's really, for example, it's really shocking to me when I meet somebody and I know this person for a year or two, and I never relate them to music or anything. And then they told me, no, yes, I study 8 years of piano, or I
Oh,
study seven
yes.
years of guitar or a violin, but I hate it, and just like, what are but I mean, with the years, I learn the lesson, and I know that this happens to many people, which that this doesn't mean that it will happen to you, of course. I often dream of half studying music because I didn't, but then there's other people
Please.
like Sergio that said, I wish I also did it the other way. And
Yes.
so I think there is no, how you say, there's no golden light, like one path,
No,
I think
definitely
there are
not.
many ways to approach music from many different
I think
ends.
the right path is the mixed path actually. Like don't go straight here or straight here. Like mix, learn from everybody. Take little things from everything you hear. Really.
Yeah, but depends for who as
Oh,
Right.
well.
sure, of course, yes.
Yeah,
Depends on the
some
person.
people, yeah, and I mean, and when you play with other people, for example, playing in a band with somebody, whatever it is, garage punk to rock to folk, anything, play with other people, even other instruments, just playing together,
Mhm.
it makes you learn
A
like
lot, yes.
crazy. You learn from your mates all the time, and I learn from my bandmates everything. I mean, I learn life itself, of course.
Well,
Yeah.
talking about reading sheet music and not reading sheet music, I'm not really good at. I can kind of read sheet music, and I can kind of learn by ear. But one of the things that I found is that when I learn tunes by ear, I tend to learn them better, and
Yes.
I tend to not like when I've learned tunes by sheet music. Like if I was in a session, someone says, "Let's play this tune," then I have to hear the name before I know it. But if I've learned it by ear, I can just go with it. So I think that there's I'm trying to learn one of those Efren Lopez tunes like this. Da 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 da. What's that tune?
This is Hortus Deliciarum.
Yes. So I've been trying to learn that, and while I can get little bits of it, what's been helpful.
It is playing with one of a drum like that one up there.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I'm working on. But the sheet music helped me to find, like you were saying earlier, Pablo, those notes that I couldn't quite catch.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So I do think that it's best to do both in a way sometimes.
Yeah, a very interesting story related to this, what you're telling. When I was at the workshop with Herman, I had no clue how to read, basically. And I wrote him before, and it's like, hey, can I do the workshop without knowing how to read? And he told me, no problem. Then I went to the workshop, and it was like, well, I had a little problem because, the thing is that we were 9, and everyone could read music. And so everyone had, I got also all the sheets and stuff, but I was learning everything during the whole weekend by ear, and it was exhausting. My brain was smoking out by the ear because it was so much information, but everyone else had it on the sheet. And something really interesting is when the last day came and Herman told us, let's rework something. Do you guys want to revisit anything that we've worked in these last couple of days? And I could remember every single thing we work on, and basically no one else was really, maybe they remember this one piece or another one, but I had everything really fresh, and I was telling, maybe we can do that, or maybe we can do that, or maybe you can do that, and everyone was just like, which one was that? Oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. And I didn't even think about it until days later, and I was like, speaking of the subject of reading music and memorizing and so on, and I never thought of that part of how to be able to read so good maybe can make you lazy to learn by memory, because you have everything written down on a paper. And some of my pro musicians, friends that play for other people on a regular level, they often say that it is quite a stress if they rely sometimes too much on the score, that then they don't enjoy a little bit of the performance because maybe they didn't even visit the score, and they just open it for the first time in order to perform, and it's such a brutal exercise for the mind at most of the moments.
Right.
This is not my personal experience because I don't read, but close friends of mine have told me that, the difference between enjoying a concert in which you are free to just put out the music that is already inside of you, than if you have to be focusing on your score, right?
Well, and going back to that idea you were talking about being fearless, and how Sergio put together the idea of just playing, just getting the hurdy-gurdy out and just playing and seeing what comes out. I mean, that's in a way like you're learning the language of music. So the more you do it, you know that when you play this note, it sounds like this. When you move your finger here, it sounds like this. Well, if you're just playing, you're learning exactly where it needs to go, and then it's more likely, I think, that when you start to play, say with someone else, or you're writing something, you can actually you know what you want to say, just like you know what words you want to speak. You don't have to sit there and read the words. You can just think for yourself and come up with things. Well, if you know how the gurdy sounds and where all the notes are, then well, if I hear this in my head, all I have to do is move my fingers this way. So to me, it's almost like learning a language just by playing, just by learning the instrument by playing the instrument.
It is.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. Or at least for me, this is what music is. It's an expression, and it's literally learning how to speak another language. And there, in this learning process, it's when you discover so much also about yourself when it comes not only with music but like with poetry, with painting, with any art craft that it's a means of an expression or like a way to express yourself. This is how you how can I say, how you reach that we enjoy so much. Like, for example, there's a famous phrase that says the poet has only something to say when he's incapable to find the words to tell the feeling that he's holding. And for me, music is that. And what I try to do with music is to express all those things that they are very clear in our minds, in our, we want to always reach that state, that ecstatic state, or that state of grace, to call it somehow, in which like music, like many other arts, or even meditation or other kind of activities and exercises, I think different ones work better or worse for different people. We all have ours, but it's a lot about like learning how to see a little beyond and not only look, but to get able to put like a real eye there and then try to channel this out through the strings, through the words, through the anything. And it's totally a language. I agree 100%, because if you can tell with your instrument, I'm sad or I'm happy or I am, not only that, like the people tell so much. You can tell so much with your instrument that you cannot tell with words or with anything else. And that's the beauty of it. Is like how you describe this song. Well, listen to the melodies, or sometimes I myself also write lyrics for a song, and I decide that the melody is telling the story much better than any word it happened to me more than once that I write lyrics for a song and that I would sing it for a couple of weeks, and then I'm like, screw these lyrics, because the melody, it's saying it so much better than the word. Yeah.
Right.
How is it for you, Sergio?
Now I am embellished right now, because I was thinking the same thing you said about Nigel, and how just reading a phrase can change the way you think about the instrument and about music. It happened the same to me hearing you now. Like, it makes a lot of sense, and now I am trying. Now I am in a moment personally where I am trying to discover my musicality, and step a little bit away from the technical side and explore more the composition, the improvisation, and so on. And it was very revealing what you said, Pablo. Really, thank you. Really, really, I cannot say anything else. This helped me actually a lot. Like hearing you talking about this. Really nice.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our time together. But just to check in, Sergio, do you have any final questions for Pablo today?
I could be here all day.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
I don't think I have more questions. It was very nice, Pablo, to have you here.
Thank you.
I hope your new album is very successful. I hope we can tour a lot this year, hopefully.
Yeah. Especially this year.
Yes, next year probably. And nothing else. It was fantastic to have you here, really.
Okay, excellent. And on our way out, we're going to be listening to another tune that Pablo recommended. So Pablo, can you tell us the name of this tune again, and also the band?
Yes, it was one of the first tunes. Like, I thought, okay, I want to choose a song for the podcast from other artists, and Hedningarna are a big influence for me in many ways. And this song, it's just like so beautiful. And I have to say that Hedningarna is one of the bands that also showed me or like taught me a lot about approach to folk music, because they are very fearless, I have to say, and very daring, and they took real folk music and real folk dances to places that no one else did before. And I think they somehow, the Galician singing Galician Hurdy Gurdys, they were the first reason of why I was captivated by Hurdy Gurdy. But in my teenage years, I discovered Hedningarna, and they were like somehow the ones that actually brought it all very clear to me. And this song is called Skamgreppet, or something like that.
Okay.
And I hope you enjoy. And I want to say a very big thank you. It was a pleasure to talk with you guys. Very nice to meet you, Ryan. And
Yes, you too.
And that I'm very, very grateful and honored that you guys thought of me to have me in the podcast. Thank you very much. And
Problem.
hi, everybody.
Yes, wonderful.
Bravo. So let's listen to Hedningarna. Come on.
All right, here we go.
But play it.
Yes.
It's gone. All right.